Yeah, so yesterday we were talking about floating point arithmetic, and you see that there was a very interesting history behind the discovery of this kind of standard, which we call IEEE 754 standard. Before that, the representation of floating point or real numbers, that was quite difficult, and since there is no consensus among different users, it was very difficult to transport to fulfill portability among programs and among machines. So that's why we need a certain kind of standard, and as you can see that the floating point allows you to represent very large number, very small numbers, different kinds of anything which is not an integer, but in the real domain you can express it, right? So for example, if you want to represent pi, so this would be in IEEE 754 double precision floating point format. This would look like, and of course it is an approximation, but in double precision floating point format, you have 64-bit in IEEE 754 standard. And as you can see that in floating point, there are several fields that we will discuss now: sign, exponent, and significant, and also the distribution of bits. Like for example, 11 bits are there for the exponent, 52 bits for significant, for double precision floating point arithmetic. So let us look into the IEEE 754 standard and the format of floating point arithmetic. We'll give some examples and then pass on to how to add to floating point numbers or multiply to floating point numbers in hardware. All right. Okay. So let me review floating point representation very quickly. I guess you are already familiar with floating point representation. So they are used to represent real numbers, could be very large or very small, like pi, e, or root over 2, this kind of thing. And it is standardized by IEEE 754 committee, which was led by William Kahan in 1985. And that was developed in response of divergence of representations, because there is no consensus before that. And once the standard is accepted by all over the world, by all computer users, then this portability issues for scientific code that has been resolved. And now it is almost universally accepted by all hardware designers, all software engineers everywhere in the world. And so two representations which are in practice. One is single precision that comprises 32-bit of information, and double precision 64-bit information. As you see that this fits quite nicely in our MIPS architecture, which is a 32-bit machine and also supports 64-bit registers and so on. Well, and this is a very interesting story. I told you this earlier, that this floating point implementation of floating point divider in 1994 by the Intel series of Pentium machines. There was a bug discovered later on, and it cost a loss of $300 million to Intel. Okay, so what is the format then? So you have three fields, right? Sign, exponent, and mantissa. So you please tell me what is the purpose of these fields. Sign is of course trivial. If it is 0, then it is a positive number. If it is 1, then it represents a negative number. So my question is, how do we determine this? What is exponent and what is mantissa? What do they signify, and how do we determine this boundary between this exponent and mantissa? So in IEEE floating point format, suppose I have a single precision, then what are the distributions of bits? Total number is 32 here in single precision. So what are the distributions of bits? Remember? How many bits for exponent? How many bits for mantissa? In single precision, what was that? Anybody recalls it?
1, 8, 23.
Huh?
1, 8, and 23.
Yes, 1, 8, and 23, right? Correct. 1 for sign bit, because you need 0 and 1, that's it. Exponent is for 8 bits and mantissa for 23 bits for mantissa, right? And in case of double precision, we have this distribution. We have total length is 64. So sign bit is 1 and exponent is 11 bits. And mantissa happens to be, mantissa uses 52 bits. So the total bit sum of this number is 64 here. Here 23 plus 8 plus 1 is 32. Okay, so my second question is, you have decided that the IEEE floating point committee, they have decided to give to 8 bits for the exponent and 23 bits for the mantissa, right? So so what does this exponent signify and what does this mantissa signify in terms of the number which is being represented? We are going to represent real numbers, right? So what is the role of the exponent and what is the role of mantissa? If the exponent value is large, then what does it mean? You have high powers of the exponent, that means in a real number, how do we represent a real number? It's something like, say, 23 point something, right? In decimal. So what is the role of the exponent and what is the role of the mantissa in representing a number? Exponent signifies what and mantissa signifies what? What do you think? Hello?
So the mantissa holds the main digits and exponent define where the decimal point should be placed.
But in general terms, what I'm saying that if the exponent is low or high, what does it signify? And when the mantissa is small or large, what does it signify? Because see, this boundary is defined by the committee, right? So you have sign bit and then 31 bits are left here, right? Out of that, we have said that exponent would take 8 bits and mantissa would take 23 bits. So this boundary is arbitrary, right? So this is defined by the IEEE floating point standard committee. So the committee has certain things in mind, right? Why they define 8 bits here and 23 bits here? What is the role of the exponent and what is the role of the mantissa? It's some kind of trade-off, right? I could have used fewer bits in an exponent and more bits in the mantissa and vice versa, right? I could have more bits in the exponent and fewer bits in the mantissa. I have a total of 32 bits anyway, right? Because of finite precision arithmetic and the computer limitations in computer hardware, I cannot expand it infinite. I mean, according to my whatever I want, right? That's not possible. So total length is fixed. So you have certain bits for exponent and certain number of bits for mantissa, right? So what is the role of the exponent and what is the role of the mantissa? That is my question.
The exponent is the 10 to the power term, so
Yes.
it will grow as exponential.
It's actually you are.
The number of bits will be fine.
It's a 2 to the power something, right? In case of binary, anyway.
Yeah.
So exponent designate the range of the number you can represent, isn't so? What is the range of the number? What is the maximum number and what is the minimum number that you can represent? It is mostly determined by the exponent field, correct? Because if the number, if you have more bits in the exponent field, that means it is 2 to the power, so many bits you can go up, right? So that means the range of the numbers, the range of the representable numbers, that is determined by the exponent field. And what is determined by the mantissa?
Precision.
Precision, yes. How many bits are there after the binary point, right? So there is a trade-off between this, right? So they have decided that, well, 8 bits and 23 bits. Somebody might have chosen exponent 10 bits and mantissa 21 bits. That's also possible. And that's why you need it. That's why you see that you understand the importance of the standardization. Because otherwise, if in different machines you have different kinds of representation, then across one machine, I mean, across different machines, the programs won't be portable, right? So this mantissa part is called. They have different names. Sometimes they're called significant when you consider this one part, the 1 point something, and also it is called the fraction part. So these terms are synonymous. So what is if in binary, so I have this is a binary string of 32 bits. I know that first bit designates the sign, the next 8 bits designate the exponent, and the last 23 bits designate the mantissa. And so this number is equal to what? This represents which number? So you have the sign bit, so -1 to the power s. So if the sign is 0, so that means it becomes a positive number. If the sign is 1, it becomes a negative number, right? And then you have this mantissa. This is a string of zeros and 1. And so I do what I do this 1 point m. This 1 is not explicitly represented here. And times 2 to the power this exponent minus bias. So we have some concept like bias here. This exponent is this e, and so bias we need to define, and then the number is represented as whatever is the mantissa field. That is, we assume that is after this binary point. Okay. And this one before that is not explicitly represented here. And the advantage of doing that, because you don't need to consume a bit here in order to represent this. So this is hidden, and this is inherently represented, implicitly represented here. We don't need explicit representation here. And because of that, you have one more bit extra here, right? And that you could have used for, we have used for this mantissa part or exponent part, whatever you think. Okay, so -1 to the power s times 1 dot m into exponent minus bias. So as you can see, this is the exponent is excess biased, right? So there is a bias here. So my question is, why is this bias? Sign is 0 means it's non-negative, 1 means negative. What is the value of this mantissa? I mean the significant. What is the minimum value of the significant? This may be all 0. So that means and there is a hidden 1 here, implicit 1. So 1.0 is the minimum value of this significant. and the maximum value is 1 point. All Mantissa bits are 1, right? 1.1111. There are 23 ones here, which is very close to 2, but not equal to 2. So this lies between 1.0 less than equal to strictly less than 2.0, right? Do you follow me? It's a leading pre-binary point 1. I mean, before the binary point, we have a 1 which is not explicitly represented here, but during the computation, during the evaluation of this number, we restore it. So there is no need of representing it explicitly. It's a hidden bit, right? So significant is nothing but the mantissa with 1 point something, right? When we restore the 1, then it is called the significant, normalized significant. If you ignore this, then only this part is called the mantissa. When you restore this 1 bit here, 1.m, then it is called the significant. Okay, so why this excess biasing, and what is the value of the excess bias? We could have used just 2 to the power exponent, right? What is the use of inserting this bias? Okay, just one question here. This exponent, in floating point, you want to represent very small number and fractional numbers also, right? So this exponent could be positive or negative, right? Just like the sign could be positive or negative, this exponent could be 2 to the power something, right? So 2 to the power something, it could be positive or negative, right?
Sir, 2 to the power something is always positive, no?
No, but it said 2 to the power minus 3. I mean, what I'm saying this, I'm not talking about the sign of the number. I'm talking about the sign of the exponent. So, for example, 2 to the power 3, it means you are multiplying by 2 to the power 3 here, right? And 2 to the power minus 3, then it means what? It becomes a fraction, less than 1, right? 1 by, right?
Sir, we keep the bias to allow for negative exponents also.
But instead of negative, I could have used this exponent in 2's complement form. You have 8 bits, right?
Yes, yes.
So you have 8 bits. I could have used this 8 bits in 2's complement form to represent
It would have served the same purpose. Yes.
Yeah, to represent the positive exponent and negative exponent. But still we do this kind of minus bias, right? Minus something, some bias.
Yes.
Yes. See, the reason we do this, we want to represent exponents to be positive or negative, but by doing this bias, the value of the exponent will always appear as a positive number. See. So that during comparison, we don't have to worry about the sign. And why this bias is 127? See, this ensures the exponent is unsigned, but still it can represent positive exponent and negative exponent. But this bias allows me to represent both positive and negative exponent using a positive number. So it ensures exponent is that exponent becomes unsigned. Why the bias is 127? Why not 129, 130 or something else? And similarly, in the double precision, the bias is 1023. So once you understand why this bias is 127, this would also be apparent. Okay. So one thing, as you said, that exponent is responsible for to determine the range. That means how large or how small the number could be. And mantissa is the precision, right? That means after the binary point, how many digits are there? And this boundary between exponent and mantissa, if we just move this way, so if we move on the left, then the range would decrease, precision would increase. And if we move on the right, then the range would increase, precision would decrease. So there is a trade-off between range and precision. And this floating point standard committee, they have decided that, well, this could be the most convenient way of utilizing these 32 bits. Now coming back to this question, why this bias is 127 and why I'm going to bias it. Well, let us look into.
Is it because like we want to represent like almost equal number of negative exponents and positive? So by doing this, we can represent from minus 127 to positive 128.
Correct. You have 8 bits, so you have altogether 256. 2 to the power 8 is 256 binary combination, right? And you want to distribute them, these exponents, to the negative values and the positive values equally. And that's why you take the bias, but at the same time you want to represent this exponent as a overall positive. And that's why you take the bias almost at the middle. And that's why 127. And here, and since in case of double precision you have 11 bits, so that's why it is 1023, right? Because 1024 is just 2 to the power 10, right? That's why it is up at the middle of this. So that explains why it is in 127 and 123. Okay. So coming back to this format again, we have let's look into the single precision kind of thing. 1 plus 8 plus 23, right? So XS 127 binary coding, it means the whatever value of exponent is here in binary, consider this as a unsigned number, and then in order to get the actual exponent of the number, you do e minus 127. And conversely, if the actual exponent of the number is small e, then this e would be e plus 127, and then you represent this in binary. And as regards mantissa, is just you restore this hidden one, 1.m and times 2 to the power this e, right? And the sign bit is there. Okay, so this answers the question that why this is 127. Okay, so I have 8 bits for the exponent, so that those combinations will run from all 0 to all 1. And I want to distribute this positive exponent and negative exponent more or less in a balanced fashion, so that I map this 127 value here to 0 to represent the actual exponent 0 here. So these negative exponents will be represented by these numbers in the floating points exponent, and the positive actual exponents will be represented by this number. However, the least value of the exponent and the highest value of the exponent, they are reserved for some special use. So that means the usable values of the exponent are that run from minus 126 to plus 127. The actual exponent. And in the floating point exponent, you just add one. It is an excess 127 bias. So whatever value of the actual exponent you have, you add 127, you get the floating point exponent on the side. Okay. Now how do I represent 0 here? See, all the time you have this 1.m, right? So how do I represent the number 0? If we put all mantissa bits to 0, fine. But then I know that when it is restored, it should be 1.m. That means 1.0. Then the overall number is not 0, right? So how do I represent 0 then? because hidden bit is restored always. So it is 1.m. Apparently, it means that, so even if all mantissa bits are 0, the number would represent 1.0 times 2 to the power something, right? Then how do I represent the number 0? So that the hidden bit is not, this hidden bit is not restored by the system.
So the special use exponent.
Yeah, that means, that's why for that reason, see, first of all, you thought that, well, let us hide this bit in order to save one bit from here, right? So that leads to the problem. Okay, if I hide this this leading bit, then I cannot represent 0. The representation of 0 has become a problem. So in order to resolve that, what I do that, so I use this exponent for special use. So in order to represent 0, what I need to do that I have to use all this exponent bit, say all 0, and then all mantissa bit to 0. Because all 0 is 2 to the power minus 127, right? As far as this table is concerned. But that is not going to be, that we are not going to allow it. In order to represent 0, therefore we block this. We block this all 0 exponent and make room for special use. We don't have anything 2 to the power minus 127, even though I mean, if we apply this relationship, then all 0 would represent minus 127, right? But that's not allowed. We block this in order to represent 0. Similarly, we have special use here. We discuss that. Okay. So in summary, the exponent is biased to make comparison easier. All 0 is the smallest exponent. All 1 is the largest exponent. It is excess biased so that all the floating point exponents become positive. And this is for single precision. And the bias is 1, 0, 2, 3 for double precision. The number can be reconstructed using this expression, minus 1 to the power sign times 1 plus this mantissa part times 2 to the power whatever exponent you see minus the bias for the precision. Okay, so that's how this floating point representation format came up and finally accepted. So let us look into a simple example of encoding. For a given decimal number, I want to represent into a floating point IEEE format. And suppose this decimal number is minus 0.75. So how do I proceed to do it? First, I convert it to binary. So this is minus 0.11. 0.75 is this, right? The first one represents 0.5 and second one represents 0.25. So this is 0.75. So now I normalize this so that I have a leading one before this on the left side of this binary dot point. Okay, so I need to move this point here. Sign remains as it is, and as I move this, then I need to multiply it by 2 to the power minus 1 in order to adjust for this floating point. And so it is normalized because I have only one digit before this binary point. So what will be the floating? This is the actual exponent is minus 1. The floating point exponent should be excess 127 biased. So I add. So this becomes minus 1 plus 127 means 126. In binary, this becomes this string. In 8-bit binary, this is represented as this, right? So what will be my representation there in IEEE single precision? Minus 0.75, sign bit is 1, exponent is this. And how many digits are there after this binary point? Just a single one, and then rest is 0. So I have 1 here, and the rest 22 bits are 0. So we obtain a 32-bit representation for this number. All right. And as you see, this the leading 1 bit is never represented here implicitly. I mean, this is never represented here explicitly. It is implicit or hidden. So that allows me to have 1 more bit in the out of this 32. Okay, so that I can use it either for this, either here or in the exponent field. So 1 plus 8 plus 23. This is the thing, and second point is that my bias is excess 127, and there is 1 bit which is hidden in the significant in order to reconstruct. When you want to reconstruct the significant, we restore that 1 bit. So that's all about floating point standard, and let us look into some more examples. Suppose I want to decode a floating point number. So what I do that from the sign bit, I can determine the sign immediately. Whatever exponent I have, I subtract 127 to get the actual exponent e. So, and it will be 2 to the power small e then. And for mantissa, I need to I take this mantissa. This is a strings of 0s and 1, so that appears before the binary dot point, and after the binary dot point, and before the binary dot, I restore this 1 which is hidden, and then the overall number becomes -1 to the sign bit, 1.m times 2 to the power e, right? That's what we've discussed so far. So let us look into a specific example here. I have 0 here, exponent is this, and my mantissa is this. What is the number represented by it? Sign bit is 0, number is positive. This is the biased exponent, 1 followed by all 0. So in binary, this is 128. So the actual exponent e is, you subtract 127, that means the power becomes 1, and so the exponent is 2 to the power 1, right? Significant is you have 1 followed by 0s, and this is the hidden 1, restored the hidden bit, so 1.1. And therefore the number is plus 1.1 times 2 to the power 1. So that means this is equal to plus 1 in binary, right? Because you have 2 to the power 1, so this binary point can be shifted here on the right. And this is nothing but in decimal this plus 3. All right? You follow this, very simple. Once you know this, once you understand the interpretation of the bits, it's trivial. You please do this example by yourself. Sign bit is 1, number is negative. What is the exponent? What is this number?
Minus 0.875.
Yes, it is 126 in binary. So e minus 127 is -1. So 2 to the power -1 is the exponent. And this is, you can restore this 1.11, right? So significant is 1.11. The rest is 0 here. And then the number would be minus 1.11 times 2 to the power -1. And this -1 will push this binary point towards the left, so it becomes 0.111 in binary, and in decimal it becomes this. Clear? So you see this encoding and decoding, once you know this simple rule and once you understand the interpretation of this format, it's straightforward. Well, and maybe another example for encoding for your just practice. If I want to represent -2 in floating point format, first I convert into binary 1 0. So recall that here one thing should be one point should be highlighted. In floating point format, when you represent a number, there is no role of this 2's complement. Isn't so? There is no representation of, no 2's complement representation is used in representing either the exponent or the mantissa or whatever. And that's why when I want to represent -2 in binary, in floating point binary, I consider 2 as a signed number, just unsigned number. So 1 0, no 2's complement. So normalize it. As already normalized, say 1. Sorry, this is 1.10. So I need to push the binary point here. So this is 1.0 times 2 to the power 1. Sign bit is 1, is negative. Floating point exponent should be x as biased. So 1 plus 127 is 128, which is this. And therefore, mantissa is after this binary point all 0. Mantissa is this. So my number is 1 for the sign bit. Exponent is this. 1 followed by 7 zeros. And mantissa is also done. Okay, quite straightforward. Both encoding, decoding, I think you would be able to do it now very easily. Any question or doubt here? Whose complement does not play any role in floating point representation. All right. So how do I represent 0? We have already discussed it that well, and that's why we need this value is reserved specially so that when you use this exponent, this rule does not apply. 1.m, this rule will not apply for this special case. So here is what we explain the different special uses. Exponent is 0, mantissa is 0, then the number is 0. This is a special use, and this formula won't be, this relationship, this expression won't be applicable here. Okay, if the exponent is 0, but the mantissa is non-zero, then it would represent a d-normal number that we would discuss a little later. If the exponent runs from 1 to 254 here, if you look into this table, if the exponent, floating point exponent runs from 1 to 254, that means from this one to this string, and mantissa could be anything, then it represents a positive or negative floating point number, and its exponent is defined by this, and mantissa significant would be defined by whatever value you have in this mantissa. If the floating point exponent happens to be 255, so this has a special use. And if the mantissa is 0, then it would represent plus minus infinity. That means very large number, which is not representable here. It means it's infinity. And if the exponent is 255 and the mantissa is not 0, anything non-zero, then it is NaN. Now, what is NaN?
Not a number.
Not a number. It is used to represent either 0 by 0 or maybe 0 times infinity or maybe root over -3 imaginary number, this kind of, not a number. So this tells you the very special uses, okay? And so, and this we'll explain later, that if the exponent is 0 and the mantissa is non-zero, then we can use this representation to designate many other numbers, and these are called denormal numbers. So in order to represent 0, which is special use, so that is the representation of 0. Exponent is all 0, mantissa is all 0, sign could be 0 or 1. So you have you can represent plus 0 and minus 0 in floating point. Remember that, right? You can represent plus 0 or minus 0 depending on the sign. And in denormal numbers, that any non-zero number which is smaller than the smallest normalized floating point number is a denormal number, and we discuss that just shortly, and you will see how denormal number can be interpreted. So in this slide, you see this, everything is summarized here. The meaning of floating point, the relation between the actual exponent and the floating point exponent, decoding of IEEE 754 floating point format using this expression, and the special use for exponent and mantissas. All right. Once you remember this, then a floating everything becomes clear about floating point. What is the single precision range? I mean, we want to see in two's complement arithmetic, we say that this is the maximum range, and this is the maximum positive number. This is the minimum negative number, and so on. Similarly, here, what would be the range in case of floating point? So you have two exponents, the smallest exponent and the largest exponent with 8 bits. So those two fields are reserved, right? This is reserved to indicate 0. This is reserved for indicate infinity or not a number. So the smallest exponent value that is available to use is this, right? All 0, the least significant bit is 1. In other words, the actual exponent is minus 126. So this is the smallest exponent value which is available, which is representable in single precision floating point. And the mantissa is, it could be, this is the minimum value of the mantissa. That means the normalized significant is 1.0. So what is the minimum value that you can represent? What is the minimum normalized value, the smallest normalized value which you can represent? Okay, in both direction, plus or minus. 1.0 is the smallest value of the significant. Because this 1 is hidden, it would always be there, and mantissa is, all the bits in the mantissa are 0. And we minimize the exponent also. And this is the minimum possible value of the exponent. So this is the minimum value, the smallest value you can represent in both directions. That is in 2 to the power minus 126. So in decimal number, this becomes 10 to the power minus 38 something. Similarly, what is the largest value? The largest exponent is reserved. And so therefore, the next largest is this one, which is which is 254 minus the bias. So this is the largest exponent you could have. So 2 to the power plus 127 is the maximum value of the exponent that you could have in single precision. And mantissa, all the 23 bits of the mantissa could be filled with all 1. So this means 1 point and then all ones, right? It is very close to 2.0. It's slightly smaller than 2.0. Right? 2.0 minus 2 to the power 23. And so therefore, so this is the largest value you can represent. 2.0, almost 2.0 plus or minus times 2 to the power. This is the highest value of the exponent, and in decimal it turns out to be 10 to the power plus 38. So this is the range. of numbers, representable numbers in single precision floating point arithmetic from 10 to the power minus 38 to 10 to the power plus 38. Okay. And the same is true for you can work out the same for the double precision. You have the bias of, as before, all 0 and all 1 exponents are reserved, and actual exponent is biased 1, 0, 2, 3. So this is the minimum, smallest value of the exponent, and this is the largest value of the exponent. And as before, so here the range is quite high. In the previous case, we have 10 to the power minus 38. Now you have 10 to the power minus 308, and here 10 to the power plus 308. So this is quite large range in double precision. Do you follow me?
Yes, sir.
Okay, good. And what about the precision? So there is a precision concept of precision that Mantissa bits are significant, and each bit carries, is to the smallest, the least significant bit in the Mantissa would carry 2 to the power minus 123. It contributes 2 to the power minus 23, right? So that is equivalent to, the 6th place of decimal point. I mean, six digits after the decimal point. So that is the kind of precision you want to, that can be representable in single precision. Similarly, in double precision, that is after the decimal point in decimal domain, there you could represent 16 digits of number, so many digits of precision after the decimal point. Well, so now we would like to a little bit critically see the single precision normalized range and see what happens when one goes beyond the range. All right. So just recall that we have discussed that exponents all 0 and all 1, those are reserved. And so therefore, the smallest value is 0, 1. Sign could be the plus or minus. The smallest exponent value is this. So you have all 0. The least significant bit is 1 here, right? Because this is reserved. And what is the smallest value of the mantissa? Which is this, that we have just discussed. So this is the smallest value in magnitude, right? Both in plus and minus. Okay, 1.2 into 10 to the power minus 38. And similarly, the largest value is, this could be plus or minus. All 1 is reserved. I mean, the highest, the 255 is reserved here. So I could have all 1s, but the least significant bit is 0. So this, which represents 254. And then, since I am going to maximize my value, I put all 1s in the mantissa. And this is equivalent to, as we have just discussed, that this is nothing but 2.0 minus 2 to the power minus 23. Because why? This value. This is just exactly equal to 2.0 minus 2 to the power minus 23. See, what is the mantissa value here? I mean, significant value, 1 point, all 1, right? 23 ones here. If I add a 1 here in this, in the least significant bit position, what will happen? Keep on adding. Then 1 would be 0, and then carry would propagate. Everything would be 0, and you will have 1 0 here, right? And therefore, and this position, adding 1 here, it means it is 2 to the power 23 minus 23. So therefore, so this number, the largest value is 2.0 minus 2 to the power 23. This is the exact value, minus 2 to the power minus 23 times, and this is the largest exponent, 254 minus 127. That means 2 to the power plus 127 is this. So that we have just discussed, 10 to the power minus 38 to 10 to the power plus 38. Well, let us look into this real line now, because we representing real numbers using floating point format. And this is the middle point where the 0 is here, right? Okay. So this is the largest floating point number I can represent, is the largest absolute value. No, I mean in the positive side, that I want to represent in single precision format. What is that? This one, right? So it is very approximate, very close to 2.0 times 2 to the power 127. Agreed? Okay. So what about this side? This is minus. I mean the same thing but with the minus sign. 2 to the power 0 into 2 to the power plus 127. The same value. One is plus, one is minus. So this is the range which you can represent, right? In single precision normalized range. Normalized means, when you restore this one. So this rightmost boundary and the leftmost boundary is clear. It is determined by the largest value. All right. What are these boundaries? In the positive side, what is the minimum value you can represent? What is the smallest normalized value you can represent? This one, right? Plus 1.0 into 2 to the power minus 126. So which is this? So there is a gap here between 0 and this line, right? And similarly on the other side is the negative value, this one. So do you follow these boundaries? On the real line. This is the maximum positive value. And this is the negative value, the most negative value here. And this is the smallest positive value. And this is the least negative value. Are you with me?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So this is the representable normalized positive floating point numbers, correct? And this is the representable negative floating point numbers. So you can represent by this normalized rule, by the normalized expression, you can represent a floating point number here and numbers here. But now you have this 4 undefined zones. One here, one here, one here, and one here. These are 4 undefined zones beyond the representable ranges of these numbers. What are these? So you have a zone here, you have a zone here. If I have a number here, can I represent it using single precision floating point numbers? I cannot. Because it is beyond the range. The exponent value would exceed the maximum value. Similarly here, this is too small. I mean, the too negative number, this exponent value, is beyond mine. This is too negative. I mean, I cannot represent this value here. Similarly, these values are too small. It is already 2 to the power minus 126 here. So this is too small to be represented, too small positive numbers that can be represented. And this is too small negative numbers which can be, you cannot represent these numbers, right? as far as you have this limitations of 32-bit kind of thing with 8 bits at exponent and 23-bit as mantissa. So what are these ranges? What are these intervals rather? If we have a number here, what should you say?
Overflow.
Yes, this is positive overflow, this is negative overflow. And if I have here something here and here,
So underflow.
underflow, correct. This is positive underflow and negative underflow. So as you can see, when you discussed two's complement arithmetic, we had only concept of overflow. That means when something goes beyond range, we say that is overflow. Either may be positive or negative, right? We did not have any concept of underflow here, but in floating point representation, as you can see, you have this. You have clearly 4 no man's land. I mean, clearly 4 regions which are not representable. If you are on this side, it is positive overflow. That means too large a number. Similarly, this is negative overflow. I mean, the absolute value is so large, but in the negative side, you cannot represent it. Here, the number is too small. I mean, it is not 0, but it's so small that it cannot be represented. This is underflow in the positive side. Similarly, in the underflow in the negative side. And these ranges are symmetric. Okay. So this is a very interesting observation here, and this differentiates the representation of just integer and floating point, floating points. In case of floating point, because of this, since we have the concept of exponents, so now we have this issue of underflow has arisen. Okay. So now tell me one thing. Suppose in case of two's complement arithmetic, you know that we know that when this overflow occurs, like you are going to add 2 positive numbers, the result is negative, and or maybe adding 2 negative numbers, so the result is positive. So you have overflow, and so here, and you take appropriate action here. Suppose you have an overflow, then what do you do? What does the machine do? Do you have any representation in floating point here, or machine just halts, giving an interrupt?
Return that NaN.
Hmm?
Return that a special value, not a number, NaN.
Right, return the special value, like the infinity value, like you have all 1 and mantissa is all 0. So this will give you, this will be set to plus infinity, this will set to be minus infinity. That's why in floating point hardware you don't need explicit overflow checker. The overflow is actually overruled by the maximum value. Maximum means the infinity value, because we have a representation for infinity. I mean, all 1 here and all 0 here. It's not a number, it's the infinity value. Plus infinity, minus infinity here. Okay. And so you can see that you have an underflow region here and underflow region here. So when you talk about this denormal range, denormal numbers, the denormal numbers allows you to represent some numbers even in this underflow range. So here what happens when you consider this normalized representation of floating point, there is a sharp jump. So this is the minimum value, right? Minimum represented, smallest representable value. And then the next number you can represent is 0 here, right? From both directions. So this is the smallest value here, and then the next number you can represent is 0. So there is a sharp jump here, there is a sharp, so this is a sharp underflow here. However, we still have some options. For example, when you use this exponent all 0, 0 is represented all 0 here and all 0 here, right? But keeping this exponent bits all 0, I could have used this mantissa bit to fill out with some ones here, right? So that may represent, those set of numbers may represent something else. And that is what is going to be done to represent these denormal numbers. So instead of a sharp underflow, we can have a gradual underflow. By utilizing the numbers where this exponent value is all 0, but the mantissa is not all 0. And we'll show that how you can do that. Okay, so this spectrum is clear, right? You have negative overflow, then the representable numbers. You have negative underflow, positive underflow, representable numbers, and positive overflow. Now, one thing I want to mention that in the real line is a continuous line, right? But when you represent using floating point, you are not you are representing at the discrete intervals, right? You can represent numbers here, but in a discrete fashion, because we have finitely many combinations of zeros and ones here. So it is not a true reflection of the real line. It is the discretized value of the real line. You understand what I mean? Each floating number can be thought of a spike. So there are discrete spikes here, which represents, which approximates whatever real value, real number are there in this range. So there are spikes, right? Do you follow me?
Yes, sir.
So these spikes are are these spikes are uniformly placed, or they are not uniform here? The spikes, the difference between the consecutive spikes. So there are floating point samples here. You can say that this real line, this range of the real line, has been sampled by some floating point numbers, which are representable here. Are these sample uniform, or I mean they are equispaced, or they are differently spaced? Think about it and give me the answer next time. Okay. Well, so smallest value is this, largest is this. So now we are talking about, we'll talk about denormal numbers. In case of denormal numbers, we don't have the concept of the leading one. In case of normalized number, we have 1 point mantissa. Here we don't have this 1 point, we have 0 point. So what we do is this, we use this special exponent value all 0, but we use a non-zero mantissa here. Because if it is all 0, then it represents the number 0. But this mantissa, these 23 bits, they can be used for representing other numbers, keeping this exponent bit to all 0. So if I have a non-zero mantissa here, then the number would be represented as this. See here, the smallest normalized number is 1 point 2 to the power minus 126, right? So this is even smaller than that. This is 0 point m times 2 to the power 126. That is fixed. Exponent is fixed. but this m could vary. So this is smaller than the smallest representable number. And what could be the minimum value then? M could be, what is the minimum value of m? I mean, all bits are 0 excepting the least significant bit. Because all cannot be 0, then it would be the special case. So the minimum is this. Just last bit is 1 and all is 0. So that means this is 2 to the power minus 23 times the exponent, which is fixed. And the maximum is all bits are 1 here, which is just 1 minus 2 to the power minus 23. This time it is 1 minus because we don't have the leading 1, times the same exponent. So this is gradual underflow. We are going beyond this minimum range, minimum normalized range. The number could be still smaller. So in terms of the real line that we showed again, which just we can see that where these denominal numbers will go. So as before, we have this maximum range on the right and the maximum range on the left, and then we have the minimum representable normalized number. I mean the smallest representable number here on the positive side. This is the smallest representable number on the negative side, and so this is the representable normalized positive floating point numbers. This is the representable negative floating point numbers. This is negative overflow. This is positive overflow, and these are underflow ranges, right? So now, so these are overflow, and this is underflow, but this denormalization allows me to represent some numbers here, even within this range. And this is the minimum range, which is this. Even then, we are not. This is not. We are close to 0, but not yet 0. There is still some gap. And I can represent some values here, and the maximum value is this. And on the both side, of course. So this minimum value would appear here. This is the closest to 0, and this is the value which is the farthest from 0. But in the underflow range. So even in this underflow range, we can represent some numbers using this using the concept of denormalization, where the exponent field is fixed to all 0 and the mantissa is non-zero. And this describes the entire set of numbers which are representable using floating point. Similar thing will happen when you go to double precision arithmetic. These values will change, but the same concept will also be there. So does it make sense? The notion of overflow, underflow, and gradual underflow, which means that it is still possible to represent some more numbers in the underflow range. Instead of having a sharp underflow from here to 0, we could have a gradual underflow. We can have more numbers. We still have some numbers that we can represent and closing to 0 further. Approaching 0 further, even further. Any question here? Once you understand this, and I mean you understand everything about floating point. Any doubt, questions? So that's how this IEEE floating point committee thought about the representation of floating point numbers. So you see, there are a lot of careful thoughts behind this entire thing. See, the question is, how could you best utilize these 32 bits? And that's the best you can do it. Whatever possible representation you can do, everything has been done. It's more or less exhaustive. Okay, so let us move on. Then let me summarize the denormal floating point numbers. Exponent is 0. Hidden bit is also 0. It's not 1. And so then when you reconstruct the number, this is n minus 1 to the power sign as before. 0 point mantissa, hidden bit is 0, and then exponent is fixed as 2 to the power minus 126. So you know why this is 2 to the power minus 26? Because see, if you look into the boundary of this smallest representable number, that is 1 point 2 to the power minus 126, right? So you are going beyond that. But you are working on this on this part alone. You cannot change the exponent anymore because you have only one choice. And so that's why this, I mean, the same exponent value translates, but with a smaller value of this mantissa. So these are smaller than normalized numbers, allow for gradual underflow with diminishing precision. And when the mantissa is also 0, then it reduces to plus 0 or minus 0, which is representable in the normalized domain also. By the special case. Okay, so that's all about normalization and denormal floating point numbers. Infinity is and not a number. If the exponent is 1 and the mantissa is all 0, is plus minus infinity, can be used in subsequent calculation, avoiding the need for overflow check. You can reset to infinity. Exponent is all 1, mantissa is non-zero, not a number. Something this is used to represent something illegal, like 0 by 0, root over minus 3, 0 times infinity, something like that. And you can use it, I mean, the machine may not have an interrupt, it may go through. And you can use this value in subsequent calculation. Or you can use this bit string in some subsequent calculation. So you have infinities, not a numbers, special case of zeros. You have denormal numbers and normalized numbers. That's the whole story of the floating point representation. And we discuss mostly in the single precision domain. Similar thing will happen in the double precision domain with the changes that those numbers will be, the values would change. So representation is somewhat complicated, and therefore the operations would be complicated as well. Imagine that you are given 2 floating point numbers in the 754 format. That means as a binary string of 32 bit, and you are asked to add 2 floating point numbers. It's not so easy, right? Because you have exponent, you have mantissa, you have the concept of normalization, then maybe denormal numbers, all kinds of things are there. So operations are not straightforward as in the integer domain. For integer addition and multiplication, you don't have to worry about those things, right? You keep on adding or multiplying straight away because the numbers represent because there is a straight away connection between the number and their corresponding magnitude. But here, this is a little bit involved, twisted. The meaning of that, it cannot be directly. The value of the floating point number is not immediately readable from the representation. You need to do some operations here because you have exponents, you have mantissa, and then normalization and denormalization kind of thing. And so therefore, the addition, multiplication, arithmetic operations become complicated. And also, in addition to overflow, you have to handle the business of underflow and so on. Accuracy can be a big problem. We'll see why. Because you need to shift this. We need to do many shifts during arithmetic operation, and in order to keep the computation more accurate, in IEEE 754, what they suggested that in addition to these 32 bits in single precision, you have 3 extra bits, but these bits are not visible to the programmer. These are not visible to the programmer. These are 3 extra bits after the mantissa, after the least significant bit of the mantissa. These are called guard, round, and sticky. So maybe we will discuss them later on. That these are used so that the ultimate result becomes more and more accurate. During operations, these bits are used. They are not visible for representation. Non-zero number divided by 0 yields infinity, which means overflow. Non-zero number divided by infinity yields underflow. 0 by 0 yields not a number. So there are certain rules they have specified. And the hardware is implemented in order to reflect those rules. So implementing the standard in hardware, as you can see, is very tricky. Not only the arithmetic operations, but also fixing this, like overflow, underflow, not a number. But if no standard is used, then things could have been even worse. Then it is not possible to manage all these things unless we have a standard. And as you see that the floating point division leads to a famous bug, which we discussed many times earlier. So let us look into the problem of floating point addition. So now we understand how a number is represented in floating point format. So given that, how do I perform addition now? Maybe we look into the problem of adding 2 real numbers in the decimal domain and see what kind of complications are there. So consider a 4-digit decimal example in the sense that after the decimal point, I have 4 digits of precision. So this is the 2 number I am going to add. So if you are asked to add 2 numbers, what do you do first? In your school arithmetic?
Align the decimal points. Align
the decimal point, correct. So that means because of the presence of this decimal point, so their interpretation is different, right? So you need to align the decimal point. The alignment of decimal point means in floating point representation that alignment of the exponent value, isn't so? Because we have the normalized representation. Everything we represent 1 point something, then times 2 to the power exponent e. So in the floating point domain, in the floating point regime, this alignment of decimal number, it means equalization of the exponent value in the floating point, right? So given two floating point numbers, if we look into the exponent field in binary, if they differ, then you need to equalize them. So you need a hardware for doing that. Equalization means shifting, shifting one exponent to left or right so that the value becomes equal, right? So you need appropriate hardware mechanism in order to do that. Well, so align the decimal points. So alignment means, okay, and so this is some kind of normalization in the sense that let us put just a single digit on the left of the decimal point here. So this is 10 to the power 1. So you change it. So that means you change this exponent value. Here, everything in decimal is everything in terms of 10 to the power something. So 10 to the power 1 here, and then let us keep this as follows. This is, what I did this, I put, what did I do here? 016, oh, I see. You take this point here, and so 10 to the power 1 here. So they become equal. And then you can possibly add this, right? Because now you can factor this out. And so this plus this, and you factor this out. So keep on adding these two numbers. And it becomes 10 to the power 1, fine. But now, see, when you talk about normalization, it means that on the left of the decimal point, I should have only one digit here. But because of this addition, this normalization has been invalidated, or it has been perturbed, right? So I need to renormalize it again. In floating point, you have to normalize it anyway in order to represent the final result. So again, normalization means shifting this decimal point, right? And as you shift this decimal point to the left or right, this exponent value has to be adjusted accordingly, either incremented or decremented, right? So for example, if I normalize this, I put this here. I move this decimal point here and increase this exponent value. So it becomes 10 to the power 2 square, right? So as you can see, when you do this when you do normalization by shifting this decimal point, the value of the exponent here changes. And by doing so, since we have finite precision arithmetic, this value might exceed the representable range of the exponent. So there may be, the exponent range may be exceeded. So there may be overflow or underflow here, right? If not, so then you can keep on, if not, then you can go forward and output the result. And sometimes, see, I have 4-digit example here. And so maybe I have to round this. So that means I need to do a little bit of approximation here. If I have 4 digits possible. So I just round this cutoff, truncate something, right? Not truncate, but actually rounding to get the result. And the same thing we would need in case of when you do the floating point operation in the binary domain. So when you do floating point addition in the binary domain, we have to go through this procedure: alignment, then addition of significant, normalization, and changing the exponent value check for overflow or underflow, and rounding, because this mantissa part may exceed the 23 bits and so on, and keep on doing this, and finally output this result. So you need so many operations, and at the same time, you need the appropriate hardware to implement this. So what are the actions that I need to take when I'm going to add two floating point numbers? First is alignment. The proper digits have to be added. Addition of the significance. Normalization of the result. Because after addition, this binary point may appear somewhere, may be shifted. I mean, we may have more bits in the after the binary point. It may exceed 23 bits, which is representable in the format. This example, okay. And another thing is when you do this rounding, it might disturb your normalization again. See, when you do this rounding, what is going to happen here? See, when you do rounding, truncation is one thing, you just cut off this, right? But rounding is different. Rounding, I mean, if this digit is greater than or equal to 5, then you increase this, the preceding digit, right? That's what is rounding means. But just now imagine that in binary, suppose you have these zeros and 1, and you have something beyond the 23 bits in the significant part, in the Mantissa part. And if I round it, so say for example, I have 1, 1 here, and if I round it, it means what? This one is going to be added somewhere, right? And it might so happen that because of that addition, this normalization might be invalidated, might be disturbed again. And that's why even after rounding it, you may need renormalization if necessary. Just look into this is a sketch of an hardware, it's not so easy to understand, but I just show you what is happening in the, at least you get a top-down view of this, what is happening here. It's much more complex than integer addition process because you have to implement all these operations. Alignment, normalization, rounding, everything in addition in hardware. So if you want to do everything in one clock cycle, then it would take, so this is a complex task, very involved task. And not only that, a sequence of actions. So if you want to do in one clock cycle, what you do for other, for typical other machine operations, then it would take, the clock cycle time would be too big, would be too long, and that would unnecessarily slow down the entire machine. So it's much longer than integer operations. Slower clock would penalize all instruction. If you want to implement the floating point operation in one clock cycle, then it will penalize all other instructions. So therefore, typically floating point is implemented in terms of multiple cycles. And in most of the time they are pipelined so that we save time. So let us look into this, what sort of hardware resources you need in case of floating point addition. So given these two numbers, I have sign bit, this is exponents, and this is the mantissa. Now I just ask you to add this number by hand. What you do? What would you do? See, these exponents are different. Had it been a simple integer, you could have started adding bit by bit, right? But that process won't work here because you have an exponent field, and this is 2 to the power something, and this is 2 to the power is different value, so the exponents do not match. So therefore, adding this significant value doesn't make any sense, right? So what I'm going to do, compare the exponent of these two numbers. And so this is the larger exponent, and this is a smaller one. compare the exponent of two numbers, shift the smaller number to the right until its exponent would match the larger exponent. Then we add the significant. After adding the significant, you normalize the sum, either shifting right or incrementing the exponent, or shifting left and decrementing the exponent. So as the exponent values are getting changed because of the shift, it may exceed the representable value. So there may be overflow or underflow. So if yes, then exception, meaning that you have to fill out this with appropriate values, like which represents plus infinity or minus infinity or 0. If not, then you round the significant bit. You round the significant to the appropriate number of bits, meaning that if you have 23 bits here, you have to round up to 23 bits. And rounding may have a rippling effect. The normalization may get disturbed. So if it is normalized, you are done. Otherwise, you normalize the sum again shifting this exponent value towards the right and left and checking for underflow, overflow again, and so on. Keep on looping this for some time and then stabilize. So as you can see, this is a little bit involved process, and this is the hardware which is employed to implement the addition processing. So this is a block at the block diagram level. I can just explain to you what is happening here. So if you look into here, so this portion is this is the comparison of exponents, and this is the equalization of exponents. Then the addition process. This is the normalization process. This is the rounding process, and there are loops here, And finally, you get the output in floating point format again. So the input is the floating point representations of two numbers, A and B, which you want to add. And then this hardware just taps out the appropriate bits and does certain operation. So first of all, what do you do? Okay, you look into the exponent here and exponent field here. These are 8 bits. And there is a small ALU here, which takes this 8-bit exponent here and this 8-bit exponent here and compare them. So it took the exponent difference. Okay, so depending on the exponent difference, there is a controller which looks into that and then would choose that which one has the smaller value of the exponent. And this is a multiplexer here that would allow this exponent value to pass through, this, so that this shifting operation can take place. And once the exponents are equalized, then there is a big ALU here, which just adds up to the two significant terms. Okay, so there is a small ALU for the comparison of exponent, and this is the big ALU for for adding the significant. And again, you need normalization, and again shift left right is needed. There's increment and decrement checker, and the rounding hardware is here, and finally you get this. So this is a quite involved process, And but I'm going to say that the first step is the comparison of exponent, which is done by this part of the ALU, and then equalization of components by shifting, which is taken care of by this controller and the shifter. And some multiplexers are used here to choose whether you are going to choose this from number A or from number B. Equalize the exponent, and then so this addition. Okay, this is an important step. This addition is, however, integer addition. Because you are going to add the significant value, right? That's simply integer addition here. So you can use this whatever integer adder circuit you have, that can be employed here. So if you have big ALU, takes care of that. So basically this hardware, you have floating point addition, but it breaks down into several steps. Comparison means this is integer comparison. Equalization means it is shift left or right. And then addition of significant means again integer operation. And then normalization means again shift left or right. And again, you have to compare whether whether there is an overflow or underflow. And if there are more bits in the significant field, then you need rounding hardware, and keep on doing this. So this is an overall sketch, and as I said that the actual flow of signals to this, and it won't be apparent unless I work out a full example and show you how the different operations are taking place. Okay. So the basic elements or the components which you see here in this hardware design, they are all integer operator. I mean they perform integer operations only. The complexity of the floating point arises is translated into this alignment and normalization operation. I think you have an overall idea that how this floating point hardware functions, and as you can see that this is a quite involved process, so it takes a long time in order to perform this, because you may have to go around this loop again in order to round and re-normalize. So therefore, it's a time-consuming process. And typically in core processors where the floating point coprocessors are there, they use different kinds of pipelining technique here so that these steps can be pipelined. It means that if you have several floating point operations, one after another, so they may be consecutively executed. I mean, they may enter into the pipeline in sequence, and while one part is maybe responsible for processing operation, the other part may be busy with doing the next floating point operation and so on. And thereby you reduce the overall time. So I hope you got at least some idea. Maybe it is still vague at this point, what is happening really here, because there are too many things here. Shift left, shift right, and because of the inherent complexity in the representation, that's why the hardware implementation also becomes a little bit more involved, a little more involved, as you can see here. Now these additions are typically, these adders are just conventional integer adders. And they're adding simple positive numbers. So in the overall diagram, you see this, we don't have to worry about this sign bit and 2's complement. Sign bits are extracted together. These sign bits are extracted, and then final sign is figured out. Do you follow me?
Yes, sir.
Normalize, round, and result. this normalization part is needed so that you have just one digit on the left of the binary point. This rounding is needed so that you can fit this mantissa part within 23 bits. And as I said that in IEEE they keep 3 extra bits. So because of the shifts, so it may go beyond the 23 bits. So if you don't keep those extra bits, those will be lost. And therefore it may have a detrimental effect on the accuracy because the bits will be shifted right and left and so on. So so therefore they keep some buffer. Those bits are buffer bits, like this guard, round and sticky bits. They keep 3 extra bits so that whenever you shift there and the bits are not lost. And similarly, those extra bits helps you to find to get this result rounded up to 23 bits and so on. But those bits are not visible to the representation. Those are visible to the hardware part only. So those bits are not shown here. So when you do shift left and right, this shift right and this kind of thing. So those bits play an important role there. Since the overall diagram is too complicated, so that's why it is not shown here. Maybe I stop here. Floating point multiplication is another story, and we will cover that maybe in the next class. So I think you have got an overall idea. Floating point you have already worked out. I mean, you already studied in PDS, and you have written. I think many programs written using floating point instruction in MIPS. And so in this class, I tried to give an overall exposure to the floating point representation, its history, its representation on the real line. What do we mean by this overflow, underflow, and denormal numbers? And what kind of complexities are there while you try to implement floating point arithmetic in hardware? So maybe in the next class, we'll briefly talk about floating point multiplication, and we'll do an overall review of whatever we have studied in computer arithmetic. And that will finish our discussion on computer arithmetic. Next time, we'll move on to other chapters like processor design, memory, and pipelining.